Joined now by Matt Makoviak, Texas-based Republican consultant, Victoria DeFrancesco Soto, professor of Mexican-American Latino Studies, University of Texas. And Victoria, what do you make of this? I mean, I hesitate. One of the things I want to be clear is, to me, you can't really call this a flip-flop because there was no flip to flop. There was no actual substance in the first place to then be reversed.
Well, Chris, I have to admit, I'm surprised, but I'm not. You know, when we were in Cleveland at the convention, we saw Donald Trump double down on his immigration rhetoric. So I thought, okay, this is going to be the course that he's going to take until November. But then I take two steps back. And I remember back in 2012, I remember this very clearly, that Donald Trump did an interview with Newsmax where he was criticizing Mitt Romney for using the word self-deportation and for being so harsh with regards to immigrants. So, you know, what he feels in his heart of hearts, I don't know. But this pattern of flip-flopping is not entirely new for Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if he flips back to a more conservative stance on immigration in the last 60 days of the campaign.
Yeah, Matt, this is what I find so remarkable watching this. In real time, you're watching this individual discover the policy dilemma of immigration reform that everyone who's worked on it for 20 years has understood extremely well and has caused the electoral defeats of many of the people in the Republican Party, including poor Rick Perry, who was destroyed by Mitt Romney over it, and other people that Donald Trump bludgeoned to death over it on precisely these terms.
Yeah, I remember in Orlando at the one of those debates 4 years ago when Rick Perry made the heartless comment. You could compare that to the softening comment that he made today in the taped town hall, which will air on another network tonight. So, look, it's pretty clear to me that Trump wanted to run very far to the right on immigration in the primary. He thought he had a real opportunity to lock down the hardline immigration wing of the party. He had credibility with that wing to begin with, and he really played that issue to the fullest extent. What's also clear to me is he did that through the convention, because if you think about it, the time to soften your approach would have been at the convention when you had the largest television audience you're going to have until the televised debates. He didn't do that. They've changed the senior team, and I think he's been presented with polling that shows him he cannot win this election with 20% or less of the Hispanic vote, and he can't win it with 1 or 2% of the African-American vote. And that's why he's trying now to pivot, I think, to some extent, to make himself more acceptable to that portion of the electorate. But as it relates to immigration, you're right. Look, if you support limited government, how big would government have to be to identify, to locate, and to remove 11 or 12 million illegal immigrants across the country? What would it cost? How long would it take? It would be a huge government program that no limited government conservative would ever support.
You know, and Victoria, I mean, to Matt's point about, we keep using this term pivot or what, I mean, to me, the issue here is, this is, the toothpaste is out of the tube on this. I mean, this is someone who has, if you were to identify this individual with one thing, anything, it would be essentially the most restrictionist, hawkish, white nationalist, for lack of a better term, approach to immigration. And, you don't get to, something tells me voters are not just going to allow that to be etch-a-sketched away.
I think he's going to try to have his cake and eat it, too. I think he needs to stick to the border wall because that's what folks most identify him with. But I think he feels that he can pivot a little bit on the deportation issue. And to Matt's point, so in terms of how much this would cost, there were estimates that it would be between $400 and $600 billion to deport all of these folks who are here in the United States illegally. So Trump can say, all right, I'm a good businessman, I have business sense, I'm going to recant on my mass deportation because it would just cost too much and it would cost too much for the economy. It would be over $1 trillion impact. But let's stick to the border wall. So my hunch, if I'm a betting woman, he's going to stick to the border wall and soften on the deportation.
Well, but then, Matt, congratulations. You have just now reinvented Mitt Romney's immigration policy, essentially, right? I mean, border enforcement and no path to citizenship, which would lead to the conditions under which self-deportation would happen, that is Mitt Romney's 2012 policy. It is, in some ways, the kind of policy limbo the entire Republican Party has been trapped in and that has been killing them for a number of years now.
It is, and look, as Victoria knows all too well, there are so many complicated aspects to the immigration issue as it relates to the border fence. What do you do in the Davis Mountains that are 4,000 feet up in the air? What do you do in a river? How do you put a wall in a river? Do you subdivide ranch land that's on both sides of the border? These are the kinds of questions you have to deal with when you deal with building a fence across the entire southern border. It's why most people say you should focus on the urban areas and use the assets in the strategic fencing, and personnel along the more rural areas. As it relates to the illegal immigrants or the undocumented immigrants that are here in the country now, what do you do when one family member is illegal and one isn't? Do you divide the family? What do you do with children? There's a lot. There's a lot of complicated aspects to it.
Yeah, it turns out governing is complicated. Matt Makoviak and Victoria DeFrancesco Soto. Thanks to you both. Appreciate it.